Here are a few words I never thought I'd say. Kansas football is on the rise. The Jayhawks are one of the best stories of the entire season last year, making their first bowl game since 2008, being ranked for the first time since 2009. But now it's time to see if last year was a one-hit wonder for the Jayhawks or if Lance Leipold really is building something in Lawrence. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad that you could join us today. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com, including our Patreon account. Link for that's down in the description below. Become a part of our wall of fame and take advantage of all of the exclusive college football content we have for you year-round. And, of course, check out the address down in the description below and send us some gear. Let's get some Jayhawk representation as we continue to try to build our GE Nation from coast to coast and sharing your team in every single GE video. Kansas, guys, you got to love it. I love the Jayhawks, man. I really, really do. Last year was just such a wild ride for them, and it was so good to see them finally succeeding. I mean, keep in mind, this was a team back in 2007 was a couple plays away from a national championship and really has never been the same since. But Lance Leipold had his squad at 5-0 last year and then ultimately finished the year at 1-7. But regardless, made a bowl game, Liberty Bowl, before falling to Arkansas, finished 6-7, but clearly showed that you can win in Kansas. You can build this program back up. But was last year a one-hit wonder, or is Kansas really starting to build something in the Big 12? Well, I'll tell you this. I think they have a chance for a special year because the offense is unbelievable in 2023. Last year, the Jayhawks averaged over 35 points per game and over 430 yards per game. They were balanced at 254 passing yards per game, 184 rushing yards per game. And now 10 of those starters are back, including their star quarterback in Jalen Daniels, who threw for over 2,400 yards, had over 2,400 total yards and 25 total touchdowns. Devin Neal is back at running back. All of their pass catchers are back from last year. I mean, the depth and the lineup and the experience that Kansas returns offensively is really, really good, and will have them as one of the more experienced offenses, not just in the Big 12, but in the country. Defensively, that's where Kansas needs to work. That will really determine whether or not Kansas can take a major step forward, or if they're still going to hover around a 6-6, 7-5 type of year, or maybe no bowl game at all. Because the defense last year gave up over 35 points per game and nearly 470 yards per game, including over 200 rushing yards per game. That was their issue. They were torched. The offense could light you up, but in turn, you were going to light them up. Most of the games for Kansas were shootouts, like their game against Oklahoma, like their game against Arkansas, like their game against TCU. A lot of high-scoring games for Kansas. 6 starters back on defense, and they need help big time. But you take a look at their schedule. If you look at it, it lines up very nicely. And I have a lot of faith in what Lance Leipold's doing in Lawrence, and I have a lot of faith in this offense. And I tell you this, we talked about it last year, 5-0 start for Kansas. There's a chance they could get really close to that again this year. I think they start 1-0 with a win over Missouri State, and I think they're actually going to make them 2-0 with a win over Illinois. This is a classic battle and clash of styles. Kansas's offense versus the Illinois defense. Kansas offense averaging over 35 points per game versus the Illinois defense that was one of the best in the country last year, allowing just 12.8 points per game and 274 yards per game. Complete clash of style. Which one wins? I think it's the Jayhawks. I think it's Kansas. They have home field advantage, and I think they will slowly wear down that Illinois defense. Why? Because I don't have that much faith in the Illinois offense. Yes, I know they're a ground and pound type of program, and with Kansas and their bad and suspect rushing defense, if their defense is not prepared for this and they get bullied around by Illinois, the Fighting Illini might come in there and dominate and walk away with a dominant victory. But I think we're past that for Kansas. I think we are. I think this defense knows what's at stake, knows what they have to do, and I think Kansas at home takes down a good Illinois team who will challenge for a Big Ten West title in 2023. Give me Kansas, maybe in a mini upset over Brett Bielema and his Illinois squad. They're 2-0. They're going to beat Nevada, who was just terrible last year, 2-10, but although Kansas has to go 1,300 miles to get there. Interesting road game against a group of 5 team. But they're 3-0, and I think they'll be 4-0 with a home win over BYU. It's BYU's first Big 12 game since joining the conference, so that's exciting for the Cougars, right? Kansas would love nothing more than to say, welcome to the league, BYU. We're not the Kansas of old anymore. Bet a couple of years ago when you joined, you thought, oh, we'll beat Kansas. That's at least one win. Not anymore. Game being in Lawrence, BYU's defense was not very good last year at all. One of their weaknesses was stopping the run, giving up over 174 rushing yards per game. Expect Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal to have a big game on the ground. BYU, in turn, could do the same if Kansas is not up to par defensively. Could be one of those shootouts, but in the end, which offense do I believe will make the biggest play when it counts the most? It's Kansas. And it's Jalen Daniels, who was downright phenomenal last year. Could have been a Heisman Trophy candidate had he not gotten hurt earlier on in the year. Give me Kansas to beat BYU, to start 1-0 in conference play, and boom, just like that, they're 4-0 to start 2023. Last year, they started 5-0. This year, they're 4-0, and I guarantee they'll be ranked if that's the case. People are saying, hey, maybe not. Last year was not a one-hit wonder. Kansas is for real. They go on the road to Texas at the end of September. You want to think Kansas is for real? If they beat Texas, all bets are off. Thing is, they're not beating Texas. I know last time they visited Austin, they did. They won 57-56 in overtime. It was awesome. It was great. But last year, people thought, well, hey, maybe Kansas at home could beat Texas. Watch out. Texas got their revenge in a big way. 55-14 victory over the Jayhawks, putting up 539 yards of offense on them. They did not hold anything back. This Texas team will be better than the Texas team that we saw last year. They now have home field advantage. Kansas might be better than they were last year too, but I just don't see any way Kansas is able to hang in there. This Texas offense is way too good, and while they might take a huge step forward, I don't think that the Kansas defense has taken that huge step forward needed to slow down an offense like Texas. So the Longhorns get a big win, probably a very similar dominant victory of the Jayhawks to hand them their first loss of the year. Kansas is 4-1, but I'll go ahead and make them 5-1 with a win over UCF. Back at home, again, another game where you could see a lot of points. You know, honestly, if you're a betting man, you might want to consider taking the over a lot in these Kansas games because I don't think there will be much defense played. UCF is a prime example of that. Both teams have a phenomenal offense. Jalen Daniels with John Rice Plumlee, great quarterback battle. I expect this game to be well into the 30s, maybe higher. But, again, with home field advantage, I like Kansas here. And I actually like, as a whole, the Kansas offense and the experience they bring back and the balance they have, more so than UCF, who actually plays a very similar style of ball to Kansas. So I think it's close, but give me the Jayhawks to get the win there. And they are 5-1, guys. 5-1 halfway through the year, which is exactly what they were last year, halfway through the season. And you're not even just talking about a bowl game if you're Kansas. You're talking about something more special. Maybe not necessarily a Big 12 title, but a much better bowl game and not just a 6-6 season. 5-1, but the schedule gets tougher after that. They go on the road to Oklahoma State. And I was torn on this game. I didn't know which way to go. Because last year, Kansas torched Oklahoma State, beat them 37-16, and that was the game that clinched bowl eligibility. How poetic would it be if, once again, for the second year in a row, a win over the Cowboys clinched bowl eligibility for Kansas? But you look at the factors. Oklahoma State was beat up bad in that Kansas game. They really didn't stand much of a chance. Kansas understood the sense of urgency they needed to win that game, especially at home. But now going on the road against a more healthy Oklahoma State team, one that certainly will not get embarrassed on their home turf and is going to need every win they can get in what should be a mediocre year for the Cowboys, I think the defense for Oklahoma State steps up just enough to slow down Kansas, and they get the win over the Jayhawks. I think it's going to be tough, but there were other factors at play in that 21-point victory for Kansas last year that might not be at play this year. So I think Oklahoma State does get their revenge. Kansas takes their second loss of the year. They're 5-2, and they come out of the bye week and face just a brutal 5-game stretch to close out the year. It is tough, guys. Oklahoma, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Kansas State, Cincinnati. Only 2 of those on the road. Those are all solid teams and all very losable games for Kansas. So much so that I will say I think they lose the next 3 games. I think they lose to Oklahoma. I think they lose to Iowa State. I think they lose to Texas Tech. Quick hitters, why? Oklahoma, they lost by 10 last year, 52-42. Another one of those shootouts we were talking about. They allowed 701 yards of offense to the Sooners last year. That's bad, guys. I don't care how bad or how good your defense is. 701 yards to one team is really bad. And yes, Kansas is rested. Yes, they get to host Oklahoma. Yes, I think they'll put some points up on Oklahoma, but the Sooners are expected to take a major leap forward in year 2 under Brent Venables. I expect that to truly be the case. I don't think Kansas will have an answer for Dylan Gabriel in this offense. So they drop the game to Oklahoma. You're not going to see this defense wake up and, I don't think they allow 700 yards again. I think they're still going to probably allow close to 500. They play Iowa State the next week. They beat Iowa State last year 14-11, despite only putting up 213 yards of offense against that Cyclones defense. And my logic is this: Iowa State had a lot of games they probably should have won last year, but they didn't because of inexperience and youth and because of just dumb mistakes. They probably should have beat Kansas last year. You hold a team to 14 points and 213 yards of offense and you still found a way to lose. You just hate that. That's unfortunate. That doesn't happen very often, though. Now Iowa State gets the Jayhawks in Ames. The Cyclones' defense might be even better than it was last year. You can make the case that up until this point, the toughest defense Kansas would have faced would be the Illinois defense, which might take a little bit of a step back as well. Iowa State might be the best defense they see all year long, and I think the Cyclones get that win. I think the Cyclones shut down this Kansas offense, slow them down just enough to get the win, especially in Ames as they're fighting for their bowl lives. Again, if they can hold them to 14 points and 213 yards last year, they can allow a little bit more and find a way to win with an improved defense and an improved offense. Texas Tech, kind of the same deal here. Last year, Kansas actually outgained the Red Raiders 525 to 510, but lost by 15, thanks to losing the turnover battle and a handful of other mistakes as well. Texas Tech, much better this year than they were last year. And last year, they were pretty solid. They were an 8-win team with their bowl win over Ole Miss. Now, much better offense, experienced offense. Everybody's back on that side of the ball. And again, while Kansas should improve defensively, they're not going to improve that much defensively. Texas Tech lights them up and gives Kansas another loss. It's 4 straight losses now for the Jayhawks. And what was once a promising start now has people worried, will the Jayhawks even make a bowl game? They need 1 win in their final 2 games. Many would think it could come at home in the Sunflower Showdown against Kansas State. But I'm going to say no. I can't pick Kansas to beat the Wildcats until they actually do it. Kansas had defeated Kansas State 4 times in the last 30 meetings. They've lost 14 straight games to the Wildcats. They lost by like 20 points last year, I believe it was, 47-27. I can't pick Kansas to beat the Wildcats until they finally do it. This is a great opportunity. It's at home. It's senior day. They've got the offense to do it. Kansas State going to be about the same, maybe a tiny bit less than they were last year, but still very competitive. Great opportunity to take down the Wildcats. I just don't see it happening. And I can't convince myself to pull off the Jayhawks win until I see them actually do it in live and in person. So which means after such a promising start, a 5-1 start, we now have the Jayhawks below 500 at 5-6. They've lost 5 straight games. Very similar to what happened last year. A 5-0 start to a 1-7 finish. Does Kansas go bowling? Do they beat Cincinnati on the road to clinch a 6-6 season to go to their 2nd straight bowl game? Or do they fall just short? And many people saying, yeah, maybe last year was a fluke. What's it going to be? It's going to be another postseason trip for the Jayhawks. You can book it. This team is too good and too talented, especially offensively, to fall short of 6 wins. Cincinnati, they don't have it. On the road, it's tough. It's senior night. I get it. But they're dealing with a new coach. They have absolutely no offense. They lost all their receivers. They've got a new quarterback. They've got a new coach. The defense is going to be their strength. Kansas's offense can wear them down. And when it comes to sense of urgency, when it comes with something to play for, all Cincinnati, I think, will have to play for is senior day pride. Kansas has a bowl berth on the line. Lance Leipold's not going to let that slip away. They beat Cincinnati, and the Kansas Jayhawks are back in a bowl game for the 2nd straight year. 6-6. I could see them, honestly, at 7-5. I would not be shocked to see them beat Iowa State. I would not be shocked to see them beat Oklahoma State. A 7-win season is not out of the realm of the possibility for the Jayhawks, and I think that kind of comes back to it, guys. Our statement at the beginning holds true. I never thought I'd say it, but Kansas football is on the rise. Lance Leipold is building something in Lawrence. The Jayhawks are going to be a dangerous out this year. The offense, yes. Defense, maybe not so much, but you don't want to play them. You don't want to play them because they will score on you. And the Jayhawks will be back in a bowl game for the 2nd straight year. And the future is looking very, very bright for this once basketball school, but slowly becoming more relevant on the gridiron. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com, including our Patreon account, and including our address. Send us some gear to represent your team in every single Gridiron Expert video as we expand our GE Nation from coast to coast. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.